Hello, humanity. My name is YouTuber Anthony Wall, aka Romulus. Romulus, for example, where each modern nation is the victim of a semi ancient organized crime method, not just per theory, but per proofs in relationship to, for example, even now active, even where someone tries to report actually recorded reality. Interbranch actors lie about what is actually recorded online, as they used Facebook to hide live progressions they had in relationship to ones that were used leading up to and in the Trade Center attack, including uses of conspiracy theories and of doctors forging names, faking names, switching names, in collusion also with database racketeering against each age of fact treatment nature connected vertically and horizontally, not only vertically and horizontally, this recorded actually manifest, observable, invisible but still discernible, vertically, preemptively, already having been between the kids growing up, forced this sustained, rolls with it, subtle. They exploit it after. People I don't even know in grammar school are not letting me speak about grammar school, because in the same school they have the people with the phones being coached by the Weatherfield police chief, whole bunch of people, federal criminals proven in various natures of cases, associated also with ones that are co-defendants of former director of the FBI in a 2006 case. Now this is per a racketeering method recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, also having been used in using right through the identities of each modern nation's locations, areas, and states. Fact achievement stewards, identity of locations, job stewards. They don't have enough jobs in the most forsaken areas, not by accident. And the people who get the jobs are into identities that are used. This is also how they use the family members. They're using identity ground locations. Every single one, originally and still, recorded, criminally self-valued, criminally foreign influence, fact treatments. They need offensive, non-capable of accepting quality fact treatment nature necessary to counter the bonded, the recorded, methodically, tactically bonded, effectively, tactically bonded natures of criminal insidiousness nature, originally not by accident, overt criminal enterprises that were in collusion with private ones for self-value, even if including how as victims, but as victim predators for this fact treatment nature racketeering in relationship to it, that which has everyone, each position of the human fact treatment nature, even pharaohs, fact treatment nature tortured slaves to states and areas, all criminally foreign influence in semi-ancient times, latter semi-ancient times. The order of the mind, it just reminds free speech. So also I wanted to help the Pope, the popes, and the chiefs and presidents, for example, reading their dreams. And now see, this is speaking about God. And see Allah's name. We don't have to agree upon the name of this identity of value progression. That is distinctly, non-distinctly, the one that is the value that is simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly each identity of volume. individually grouped and together. Why we are a species actually, as identity of the ground, distinctly and non-distinctly as a species, as with sexes, with grouped ages, with grouped area. Each one is parted from their slash our course, which is by the idea what is true always, what is coming to and from, while as us, while with us, and while for itself. As what see, the ancients revealed that we need to agree about this scientific value that is critical, because if you don't have it as a scientific value, then you can't teach about logic. Now, I'm not a doctor. Since semi-ancient times, recorded, we have people that are doctors of since whenever they had doctors. So, and we have reception of history that is recorded, self-valuing, of recorded effectively, tactically having been made self-valued, criminally foreign influenced acceptations of science, of scientific process, and of scientific consensus, and that used in relationship to arguments and to time treatments with courts and with each of with the executive police forms, foreign and domestic, juxtaposed to and as identities in relationship to identity of the ground locations since before modern nations. Native humanity, many ways more sophistication as English reveals, and as Arabic, all the languages have an identity that is like ours, individual, grouped, and species, and has its identity of relationship to itself. We are temporary positive as a quality of diffusion, where more and more of this one identity of value progression, that all things are at once, it's making more of itself. Only the extent of it is debatable. See, we have the extent of it debatable by identities that fight with each other, discerning their identities in relationship to contrast, and then defending that with identity ground relationships to when people have disputes about what is positive or negative, and with sequence shifts and about what is actually being sustained. We have this, again, not just juxtaposed natures of overt criminal enterprises, private, into everything. Each identity ground location was a victim. Our founding parents, America's, other nations had to stick up identities before they had to stay grouped victims to what they had to react to. No one knew how to do it, so they did it as victim predator, and they were invested to self-value group defenses of themselves, incapable of it perpetually, and not anyone realizing. Everyone was blaming it on other things, others themselves. All that nature demonstrates in demonstration of this. Our temporary slash lasting positive that will always be positive. It will also is also more and more positive or negative. Heaven and hell are about what are scientific variables. God is a scientific variable. The identity that we're speaking about, the one that is one each individual grouped and together the species body of value, the identity of value progression, that is that, and simultaneously while it is each identity of value progression, each planet, for example, individually grouped it together. It is one identity of volume as a scientific variable. We don't need to agree about the name of it. It's the identity of it's at least the identity of forever. We have to agree about that. The ancients didn't have problems about the name of it because but this they weren't consumed by criminal foreign influence, especially this natures of it, all juxtaposed by one that has nothing to do with the motivations of the ones it facilitates and maintains, rolls with each identity of each location, area, and state, individually grouped together, each identity of each science, all victims invested to reactions to it, and then defenses of that, the perfect world forsaken. We have that's what they do. They teach the same way the overt criminal enterprises are victim predators. The branches of government are victim predators. The same ones we see on CNN, Fox News, the same ones we read about in newspapers, like Hartford Courant, oldest one in America. See, but see, everyone are victims. In a perfect world, you would be able to go to court to have things solved. But the courts are involved with wire crimes and mail crimes, and roles originally and still self-valued, how they're maintained, used remote. Each modern nation, since before the births of modern nations, founders, messengers, thank God for them, because they preserved English, they preserved other languages, they did damage control too. Whereas now there was no means to preserve it. And so what it is preservation of is the identity of logic with no criminal foreign influences, with no physical delusions. Sibiru have not been afforded that nature of logic with free speech ever heard. Not just our long words, it's long words. The engineering naturally. And that is so much so that we aren't by that system, its complete nature it then takes us to be negative as negative value nature. With the rest of the space nature. The only reason the length of high D's that is per science. For space nature transfer. Science reveals this. But we have all of these terms with science and with scientific consensus, tactically, criminally foreign influence, specifically in relationship to these identity of the ground, uses of each identity of each age of fact treatment nature, in conjunction with and as, and on and off each database relationship simultaneously, on and off each campus database relationship in layers, roles with sequence racketeering, roles with identity racketeering that originally and still effectively kept each location, area, and state self-valued roles with and as victims only capable of not fathoming sophistication that was here and controls what actually goes down with each age of fact cheap nature, and in relation where they actually kept and keeps fake sides self-valued roles, for example, leading up to and in the World Trade Center attack, through other natures of bonded racketeering, justice racketeering. They already did this with each case, each day. So they were saying, oh, let's fight on that issue. That's why they're not preventing mandated law, and they're lying about what is actually recorded over the phones, so no one can report it. If you go to their mail crime methods with the play people, everyone's sensibilities, then their name stacking, they're blitzkrieging individuals and getting everyone to get behind the blitzkrieg, getting everyone to get behind the shock and awe. Germany, America, the religions, Jewish people, the Pharaoh, they have the same enemy. This came from semi-ancient times before that. There are proofs they took down a mountain, the mountains where they're putting, where they have where they have the pyramids, and that took down freshwater streams. There are proofs that the soils are tactically denatured. The identity of relationship to the ground that really revealed all the seeds. The time was pleased. So there, and with the course of logic and with the course of communications true, there are critical needs to have this identity of value progression discerned. Reality, that and how it actually exists. Not just sequentially, but simultaneously as three identities of sequence nature that are bonded as the Trinity. What they are bonded by is also two further identities of sequence nature. And the value of our quality of diffusion as each Trinity, each identity of value progression is also demonstrably inherently value as nature, and nature as value with two identities of value progression on both sides of it. Where and as and how we are forever nature. In and as the phenomenon of a temporary quality of diffusion of one identity of value progressions, identity of relationship to itself, that is the one discernibly making more forever nature. Only the extent of it is debatable. We were generated. We are generating more and more forever nature. It is recorded, self-valued. And how self-valued as victims, as victim party, you try to call it, just say they're victims. There's some, because we have to counter how the judicial branch has been preventing mandated law and lying about what is recorded online, the values of it. Now, the sequence shifts reveal this. Their uses of their Facebook page for a whole bunch of natures of racketeering. The Britain Superior Court with a principal sex offenders campus when he was still on there, and with a Joshua Julian, and with tons of people associated with a forensics location in Sandy Hook, and Aurora, Colorado, and Parkland, all connected to Weathersfield interbranch, intermilitary, identity thefts, frauds, and racketeering. Uses of identity the ground locations, like in Middletown, associated also with, his victim. But then, but through opinions, those opinions are used, like Hamilton got with the plays. The one from New York, from Weathersfield, associated with people with bad doctors with kids. See, they're keeping everyone speaking through other people. They're not supposed to be doing things with the law. They shouldn't have done. They're backed into as the same archetypal criminal enterprise needs to hide it. It's higher than any of them. originally instilled, because we're in their value nature system. Hundreds of nations at once, fake positive, can't stand correlation nature with sequence true, and the order of the finite as its value. These are 5 identities of value that emotions have a relationship to, for example, that we are forbid since semi-ancient times. Demonstration of. So they keep, because they have it conformed to fake in times. Let the courts decide where that becomes, where that was and is necessary in relationship to all the lies, all the victim reactions defended that are blocking and keeping locked the knots tied around the most forsaken areas, identity, the ground locations, values to correlation nature. American history is about understanding it simple. It's about understanding the fact, human nature, torture, and slavery of our founding parents. And who did that? An archetypal enterprise, a racketeering method. A whole bunch of other people, the same thing, since semi-ancient times. This just reminds. So there are ancient times, there are semi-ancient times, and there are latter semi-ancient times. Mid semi-ancient times and latter semi-ancient times. And then there are modern times, which begins with the founding of our nation, partially founded with and as the Native Americans, partially more responsible for our survival and for our virtues than our founders, but not where it comes to Marbury versus Madison. But his identity is still stolen. Secret, that's still self-valued by the people who know the most about it. As identity, the ground relationships, self-valued uses of that. Self-valued roles, needs, and natures actually recorded worse than indifferent to how things weren't fair and aren't fair and are fake. Our criminally foreign influence database relationships, sequence relationships, uses of other people's identities that don't even know each other, specifically to maintain self-valued, a nature of positive, cultivated self-valued. By and as the value of each age of fact nature's criminal ceaseless nature, perpetually exploited this way. Russians were here since before anyone was born. Russians are the human species, humanity, like America, hurt by the same archetypal criminal enterprise that keep the state scenarios and the locations of each modern nation self-valued as identities that can only defend themselves in relationship to, only capable of being manifest, to allowed to deal with internation relations, encounters to while still as and from and with and for the identity of negative value nature progression, each identity of modern nation self-values through reactions and through defenses of reactions to things like predicate acts, to things like mass criminal insidiousness natures, to collusion, all the things tied to all the illusions with that. The sequence racketeering self-value, the hurting other people because the hurt are being hurt specifically maintained by what is made simultaneously helping people because we have the identities of misprision, each individual grouped and together of each branch of government, criminally foreign influence, each individual grouped premises treatment, sequence treatments, nothing personal. What do they have to do? Pretend such is personal. Well, how do they get away with that? Preventing mandated law. Pretend they don't understand what people are saying. Respond to what is actually, they interbranch or recorded, lying about what is recorded online in conjunction with their roles in Connecticut interbranch into various natures of courts leading up to and in the Trade Center attack context with the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan right across the street from the trade towers right before they were taken out. It was later proven that the legal papers had been brought to the court time stamped on time and presented to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals there to a panel of judges. And then the trade centers were hit. That proven after led to another part of a case /S that had already been in Washington, D.C. note too. And I've been there also, boxing note too. And so this 2006 case, former director of the FBI, associated with a whole bunch of people involved with racketeering with kids and with the principal sex offenders campus, then and further with New Britain Superior Court, where they used their Facebook, with people with a Joshua Julian, and with a family and with extended family members involved with this, with other sex offenders, family members, also on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, their roles with other nations associated with the DeMauro family, a whole bunch of people associated with them, with the Mallon family, prosecutors, judges, retired and standing, all victim predators though. They already have been so. They already have self. That's why they were used remote. Now, in relationship to coordination nature, they self-value. Russians and Americans, for example, all these nations, they have conspiracy theories. They have roles with what conformed and contains the human fact-sheet nature. They have recorded uses of and roles in CNN. Like, for example, it's not personal. And all you have to do is help if you can even hear. They have you guys insulated. Plus, their racketeering method where they're lying about what is actually recorded online in conjunction with their racketeering, falsifying police reports, human trafficking, attaching people to fake locations, involving witnesses against there's a detective Samuda who pretended he was a arresting officer of me. He's involved with a whole bunch of officers from my town and from East Hartford, forging names, switching names, and from Hartford and from New Britain, and etc. These are awesome people. Sandy Hook. See, Central Connecticut State University has roles with the criminal justice system. They have roles with that juxtaposed with military police, military families, like a Justin Klavinskas. I don't know his brother's name. And they're associated with people on the corner, like all along roads on routes in my town. They have the sense and sensibilities this way, where the judicial branch is preventing mandated law and already involved since I was a kid with people I only know in context where they came up to me with confessions and I barely know them. So they're still strangers. And now those are people that interbranch have been involved with them with the racketeering uses, worse than racketeering, worse than war crimes, uses of database, subtle things though. It is also recorded overt in relationship to, again, to the identity of relationship to the ground, self-valued in relationship to our most forsaken people. Our identity of volume, we know it because we are it. Each individual is this complete identity of volumes, complete identity of relationship to itself that will only stay that. That's why we can't be that all at once. That's why we have to be a species at the same time. That's why we can't be that all at once. That's why the rest of space, that's why the rest of Earth has to have no criminal foreign influences. That's why we have to remove them, or Earth's value leaves through as us, leaves of IDs. We don't stay positive that is also temporary, lasting, positive that is also positive unto itself. So, so when we stay, we don't. So we only stay there automatically now because we're temporary. See, but now we're in value nature systems other than one actually tied to our quality of fact, treatment nature with sequence through in its purpose, like religious rights. We don't have religious rights this way. Offensively, they have the identity, the grounds, religions, force self-defended with physical delusions, and in collusion with the courts and with other branches of government, distinctly, non-distinctly, with crime methods and roles with child abuses, even sexual. Also, for how it's medical. Then they have the identities of reactions to such things, not by accident, as colleagues and things like that associated with identity, the ground, relationships, jobs, statutes, and precedents, in conjunction with the uses of scientific process and scientific consensus. Again, for example, with the uses of premises treatment, with the evaluation of the substance of people's arguments. Again, with America and Russia involved with elections racketeering, where they have psychology with a whole bunch of nations, also with time racketeering, worse than war crimes, against each age of fact treatment nature, against each position of the human fact treatment nature, already self valued, not by accident. The perfect world that leads this way alone, evolution's course. It feels like games. So the ancient gaming system. So what to do? For example, we're going to make a game. For example, that's the name of the game. For example, which is if anyone's following, we need someone to who's going to believe in it. You guys, you're gonna be like a head leader of. I mean, you're going to be a guide for the other people to do what you do. We make the most forsaken areas, or who's going to represent them. Which is because we're gonna have more rapid. We're gonna make it mean stack. That's another game. See, like those big buildings in New York City. This is ties to science, where the identity of the sciences share an identity, but politics is involved with identity thefts, racketeering, sequence shifts of 5 identities of it. Not just sequence, or not just identity thefts and frauds and racketeering, which uses of black is still when they make opinions about um such like even Jim Crow laws, when they make opinions about, oh, did you even read the statutes and things like that. See, we have to have discern the difference between semantics and pseudosemantics. We have to have discern the identity that ratiocination and that pseudo ratiocination share. That which psychology was forced to maintain collusion with various natures of courts, all the natures of courts, originally and still, distinctly and non-distinctly, each individual grouped and together. Per this identity ground location method, that method they use as sense and sensibilities. For example, how they use everyone's family members, roles with how they use each age of fact treatment nature as victims, but as victim predators. Also, how they're using sequence nature, which is where and how, as everything is in demonstration of how there is this simultaneous nature. That is 3 bonded and increasing identities of sequence nature, whereas and how we are valued in relationship to the scientific value that which is sequence true, the value of and as the order of the finite, the smallest parts of our body to the biggest, the order between, all things individually grouped together. So it is the order, is the value of the order of sequence true before Earth. This is why I wanted to say for the Pope to know how to defend religion and in relation. And this is, I'm not, the reason I don't say anything to about how the king should defend Islam is because that's about the identity in logic, where logic has been prevented. Anything but collusion with and as criminal foreign influence locations, areas, and states, and sciences, and all database relationships. And way worse from that, back right to worse from that already self-valued all locations. That's the method. All locations, everyone missed what was all locations. And then with all that there, everyone right built to have everyone blame other things, others themselves, to have that defended, to have that self value, to use that remote, to have that self value. Remote since before electronic definitions of remote. So true. Hey man, how are you doing? Hey, hello, Sam Darbon. I forgot what we were speaking about. So just about, so the church, this is what the church and everyone miss about language. The ancients revealed that 26 sounds of the English language have an identity of relationship to themselves. And they have a value of that. And the identity of relationship they have to themselves is the identity of relationship that we have to ourselves, humanity, individuals. Simultaneously, we're grouped and species. Because the integrity of one identity of volume, that is all ones that some is making more of itself through more temporary / lasting identities of forever, of its forever nature, which is an identity that has positive or negative as perfect memory. We are semi-memory and demonstration of this, which is the order by that which is not to, that is science not towards the identity of ground locations. The identities of campuses all distinct. See, this is the ancients were led by what revealed English, revealed it before criminally foreign influenced victim reactions to criminally foreign influenced wars, things like that, locations, areas, states. No one was realizing it conformed everyone to identity of the ground locations, identity of the ground nations, individually forced to be grouped to defend themselves, ourselves. And then we defend as identities in conjunction with identity and as identities of the law, identities of quality of human fact, human nature, expertise, keepers of knowledge, used to get over on what is really most knowledgeable in relationship to finite details, sequence details, in relationship to active body of value treatments, progressive value treatments. And see, then we have our nations involved with identity thefts, frauds, and racketeering as victims, but as victims self-valuing it, but as victims that way too. We have to counter what is the source of criminal foreign influence and the methods of it, but it's not sourced by one nation. It's fluent through each. It's self-valued already. We have to admit tactically denatured native ground identity of relationship to itself with no criminal foreign influences, self-valued, including the tactically denatured identity of relation to the ground means to afford, means to undenature it. See, the soils were totally different soils, relationships to water that revealed all the seeds. So this is this has relationship to why also the first part of the Old Testament, written in Arabic, distinctly and non-distinctly, and written in English. The English and the church does not know how to explain the words for how to defend. See, now we're talking about God. God is what we think is true always, not denying exceptions. See, but we have people using, since some age of times, scientific consensus and scientific um, process, criminally foreign influence, and with physical delusions, intersciences, uses of the sense and sensibilities of the identities of the stewards of and as such. In conjunction with and as that how we haven't been each identity ground location, it's further and further needs to self-value each identity of correlation each see there are things that group experience each age of fact should be in nature too that stay off records no one speaks about but through the group like secret but they keep that thinking it's real because it's in collusion with where and how originally instilled the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, this all identity grounds, locations, the sciences and layers, all database relationships since before computers involved with this with laws that were directly connected to our speech, the freedom of it, the liberation of it, not in relationship to oh I can say the F word or I could do that. I'm saying this in relationship to the details of quality of free speech. Actually, sequence true. Wait, but what happened to Tower? I don't. I don't understand Tower. The edifice of you mean the zenith about the zenith. The Z letter Z is the zenith. So what happened was they made everyone only be able to fathom pathology of means to speculate what the future is going to be like means for security from only perceived tactically denatured overtly denatured identity the ground relationships to itself native pure the identity of value progression system we are actually as realities actual. So then we have debates on how on what yes the zenith so we are our peak of sophistication now as humanity each modern nation individually grouped together it's lower than the zenith whereas now it counts in relationship to answers the identities of answers given to questions like about Marbury versus Madison because they don't satisfy all appearances of real justice originally stuff. For example, you're entertaining the physical delusions they have. Everyone speaks when they try to explain Jim Crow laws because already they self-valued roles blaming the real causes of the identity thefts, frauds, and racketeering blamed on other things other than themselves, and that was used remotely. That was they maintained this down to each individual group together. It's much easier than anyone realizes to keep each location, area, and state shock and awe and forced to be an identity that is individually grouped and together in collusion against each individual's, each group's, and everyone's real wants and needs right at once, all victims in a trap, a semi-ancient trap. So this is what Little Rap Guy and friends are about countering, by also which we can do. This is what art is for. See, we have criminal insidious nature that we have to discern in relationship to theater as well. Now they're right. They're also involved with all locations, areas, and states in each age of fact treatment, nature, and value treatment by each branch individually grouped together. Then they have live progressions from that misprision. So they have needs to pretend to be against things and to pretend to care against things, to care for things. At the same time, they have needs to hurt it for the identities they are as branches with their colleagues, people that know and don't. Statutes themselves, precedent itself, legal precedents is criminally foreign influence. The religions are about this quality of fact treatment nature, wherein and how the predicate act of the law is in demonstration of this identity of value progression we are as a nature of volume, as distinct from the nature of volume slash S that the wind is. For example, the breeze, the gases together, they interact with themselves differently. The helium, the carbon dioxide, the oxygen, together the right mixture. When we're there, what causes identity of value progressions positive and evolution's fruits and gifts is the science that goes by this identity of volume we are actually by and as. And this is about with the value of the order of sequence true, the value of the order of the finite true. Not denying the slightest thing and not denying the slightest things having been valued, exploited, denied. Originally, still, they did this to us. Each modern nation, everyone was engineered. If how do the pyramids fit into all this? Because rivers come from mountains. Mountains, when you go up, it gets colder and colder. So then at the top of the mountain, you constantly have water dripping down. Then it saturates the soil. Then there's so much it can take, and again, so it starts collecting. Then rivers form. See, we have this tactically denatured so they can wear cattle, and in a trap. Every modern nation, we're in a semi-ancient trap that came from before modern nations' religions. Thank God for them, for science. That's why they don't even know how, they don't understand how each location, area, and state of each modern nation prevented the free speech to speak about what they're talking about science right in the beginning of the Old Testament, right in the beginning of the Quran. Thank God for that. See, so with the ancients revealed, you need for science, God is a variable. Lowercase g, you're not sure if we're positive or negative, while as temporary positive. And uppercase g, that's what positive, also positive onto itself looks like. So inside the capital O, if we write an S, you see yin yang. You see the individual, small piece of volume. You see the grouped parts of the yin yang, black and white. One identity that is invisible but discernible, bonded then. The power, might, and force are parts apart, but they are bonded still in two and simultaneously. See, what is sequence nature is in demonstration of what is simultaneous nature. So infinity to one and three natures of zero to one to infinity are simultaneously valued by what is even identity of forever nature that is also already greater than that, before and after us. And what is after us is already valued now. Its identity of relationship to itself. Has anyone ever told you you kind of look like, I don't know who Paul Rudd is. Paul Rudd is cute as hell. Thank you. He can get really big and really small too. Little rap guy. Little rap guy and friends, there are cartoons on his YouTube channel. LRG. Get it? Little rap guy. And then Little Rap Guy and Friends. LRGAF. Large as far excuse me. These guys are anti-archetypal criminal enterprise to train the species, humanity, to discern that which effectively keeps each position of the human fact sheet nature, each position of leader even, forced to collusion with them, pretending other. Identities of misprision, millions of people, all locations, areas, and states in collusion as victims, having blamed defenses of it on other things, others, all leveraged against everyone. These are not. This is not the way. So we're up saying Darborn. So holiday. High omega longs. Inherent diffusions alpha y. That is simultaneously a statement and a question in relationship to this identity of value progression. Now that's debatable, but who would debate it? They need to use arguments that are sequence shifting, self-valued, that are self-valued, denial of finite truths and the value of that, the connection of it, the order of things. Act It's a statement and a question, and a statement answers the question. No, it has a differential relationship because these are three identities of sequence nature at once. But it's also from our perspective. Like, for example, the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall. These are three identities of sequence nature. But they are also valued with what is not just connecting each cell wall to each cell wall as body of value discernment. It's not just revealing that and how there is invisible but still discernible value progression with that, with the water that's coming through that too. The identity of the ground has an identity of relationship to itself down to the finite. That is value. Its identity and demonstration to us connected to all questions as all answers. It will work. It's not just what works, but what works also as what is temporary / lasting positive. That which is evolution's fruits and gifts. Actually, that which is the course of the Santa Claus, which is to be about positive all year round. Because identity of the ground, locations of the church. And St. Nicholas was put into jail per Wikipedia. I read on Wikipedia online that St. Nicholas was put in jail. So it was most probable that they put him in jail. And it's most beneficial to understand how they put him in relation to, we have to understand how, like, again, with English, this is why Jesus Christ has the capital A on the left side of his halo and the capital W on the right side of his head. On the Yale website, they have a picture of this. English language, this is about the English, and which comes after W, X, Y, Z. You see, A, B, and C are bonded distinctly and non-distinctly with the rest of the body of value that the English language is. Each word spells out, each letter spells out a word, and each word spells out a sentence. And so holiday, high omega, longs, inherent diffusion, alpha. Why? Now, this diffusion is the quality of diffusion we are as life, as a positive or negative relationship to this identity of value progression as science, which means we have to use it as a scientific variable. It's a statement. I wish I knew as much as you do all this. But that's where you can. This is it. You know now. The inherent diffusion alpha sounds so cool, man. The alpha and the omega. See, yin yang will never part. It cannot part. Per what it is drawn to be. I didn't read that, but you could see this is the individual nature of volume in the small part on both sides. Inseparable is one identity of volume that is simultaneously multiple identities. The same way our identity is the identity of our heart. It is the identity of our lungs. It is the identity of them individually and grouped. Like ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that which is dead will never die. You see, and the volume of what is positive and the volume of what is negative increases. So heaven and hell, but see, we have the takes on religions in conjunction with the takes on the sciences, in conjunction with the takes of everybody with their opinions, originally and still victims of this trap that Native Americans fell last to. All modern nations are already blaming other things other than themselves, even kings and pharaohs. All roles everyone couldn't fathom how they have standing, self-valued criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments. Roles with that, uses of it. Everyone used remote. So they made Native Americans blame other things, others themselves. But not all of them did it. So they enabled enough resistance that enabled the phenomenon of James Madison to become manifest. Now his identity is still a phenomenon that is manifest, yet liberated, and still self-valued through our schools, where our kids are forced to go to school. Roles with on-off databases, not just with the schools, but simultaneously private databases, including medical racketeering. And now this is simultaneously where, and as and how you have to counter, we have to counter the judicial branch's roles with this, and how they have uses of these are interbranch women, victim predators too, though. For roles with database racketeering, attaching, pretending fake recorded things in the databases, how it's tied to value treatments at World Trade Center levels, at sanctioning levels, at military levels. We have translators, hundreds of nations at once, time and positions that keeping people knaves. Like, real bad decision making reactions, hurt, that then defended, and not by accident. They all kept needing to hide the lies of strangers by defending the same means to uses of identities of law, uses of identity of title, use of identity of location, use of identity of relationship to people's relationships to groups with database relationships that are exploited by methods originally still bonded that no one touches because of how they lock that involved with other things. To maintain self value, for example, on college campuses, they tell people to write complaints or write opinions about teachers on the camp in the right after the class. This is a long video. I'm going to quit the video. Okay, thank you, people.